Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we're going to take a look at the awesome Q95. It's being offered in three options. There's a fly sky, an FR sky, and if you already have your own receiver, you can get the plug-and-play version. I received the fly sky version, but ended up having a little trouble getting it to work with my 4-in-1 module. It drove me nuts not being able to get it to work. I just couldn't figure it out. After a series of failed attempts, I pretty much just said screw it and threw on one of my trusty FR Sky receivers. Alright, so let's see what's in the box. Here is the Fly Sky receiver. It's a PPM only receiver that runs only AFHDS, which is a Fly Sky protocol. It's nice that they also included some wires and heat shrink. Instructions for the VTX. This was the only instructions included in the whole box, so use it wisely. Next up are some prop guards which double as landing skids. And next we have some 2035 props from GemFan. You get 2 full sets, which is absolutely fantastic. These props are really awesome. I've used these before on a different quad and they're plenty powerful, but best of all, they are ridiculously durable. I crashed a bunch of times where the blade on the propeller bent back almost 90 degrees and it was absolutely no problem. I straightened it out and got back to flying. Great set of props. And finally, the Q95. Let's take a closer look. What I'm going to do is start from the front and make my ways around the quad. Starting off first is the all-in-one camera VTX and antenna combo. One of the smaller ones that I've seen, measures in at just 15 by 13 millimeters. It's got a 25 milliwatt VTX, which should be perfectly suitable for flying indoors. As for flying outdoors, I would play it safe and keep this thing within a 100-meter range. 48 channels are supported in the 5.8 GHz spectrum. It's plenty of channels to choose from, which is adjusted through a single button placed on top of the camera. The 600 TVL CMOS camera provides a good picture quality. Check out my flight test for an example. I've tested flying in open fields as well as indoors, and as long as there wasn't multiple obstructions, I found the video clarity to be pretty good. Again, check the flight test for reference. Next up, the package included 2 sets of GemFan propellers, but no screws. The propellers have holes for the screws, but at the same time they fit really tight around the motor shaft, so I'm not sure if it was meant to be used without screws or not. Either way, I went ahead and cannibalized one of my other quads and threw them on this one, as I didn't want to risk a crash. The propellers clear the frame with about a millimeter clearance, so I didn't have any issue there. However, the power cable and motor wire do have a high chance of getting caught up in the propellers. And when this happens, get ready for your quad to pretty much just flip over and hit the ground. Here are the 1103 7500 kV motors. Not my first choice when it comes to size. I would actually prefer going up a size to 1104, just like the AR Fun, simply because it flew so well. But we'll see how they perform soon enough. Next are the 4-in-1 BLHeli-S ESCs. These are 10 amp ESCs which will support D-Shot 600. When you go into beta flight for the first time, you'll see that it was actually set to 1-shot 125. You definitely want to switch to D-Shot to make the most of these ESCs. Also, PID loop rate can be increased from 2 kHz to 4 kHz. The 4-in-1 ESCs are connected to the Omnibus F3 flight controller through a 6-pin connector. The Omnibus F3 is actually a really popular board. It seems like all the micros I've tested use this board, this exact same board. It's cheap, it's fast, and it's got an OSD, so it's not hard to see why. It might surprise you to find out the Q95 doesn't have an OSD. What happened was they used a camera that doesn't have video in and out connections, which is something you'll need in order to get the OSD to show up. It is possible, you just need to find out where the video connections are on the camera module. The buzzer here is simply hot glued on. It looks like they just threw it on real quick because when I received the buzzer it was pretty much almost falling off. I glued it back on and it's been good ever since. The JST connector here, in my opinion, is dated hardware. With microquads requiring more and more power, it's a good idea to be using something that can handle the higher amperage. An XT30 or an EC3 are both good choices. As far as the frame goes, it's got a 2mm main plate along with 1mm side plates. On top, there is space where you can install a receiver. There's about 14.5mm by 30mm of free space there, and you can choose to use double-sided tape like me, but there are also holes where you can use zip tie to tie it down. The side plates, I would assume, are there to protect the camera, or at least try to. As you can see, the camera really protrudes out at the most crucial spot. The lens sticks out, and because of that, it's going to be the first part that hits the ground. The camera is probably the last part that should ever be damaged. I mean, it's just so fragile. In this clip, I was under the impression that I was in horizon mode, and I punched the throttle without giving any pitch. This resulted in a good smack onto the pavement. Also, I didn't have the motor wires tied down, so when I tried flying again, the wires got tangled up in the props, which resulted in me crashing again. This time, the whole camera region fell apart. It wasn't really a surprise though, because the camera's not actually secured down by anything. It pretty much just sits snug between two side plates. So it would probably be a good idea to use some glue or some double-sided tape for added security. In my case, I used some hot glue on the camera section, which surprisingly it hasn't melted yet. The Q95 flew pretty good even straight out of the box. This is with stock Betaflight settings, but if you're looking for something a little bit more responsive, here are a couple of tunes that I'm using. Here are a couple flights I spliced together. The center of the clip does look a little blurry. This is from a little smudge that I had on the lens, which reminds me I should probably clean that up. The camera's actually pretty good, same with the video reception. I think the furthest I flew away was around 100 meters, and that gave me no issues at all. It did start breaking up, however, when I flew behind a tree, but that's a given. Leaves and FPV really don't go together. When it comes to flight performance, the Q95 has plenty of power, especially on the 3S, but even with the 2S, this thing is a bullet. It's also very agile. With the tune that I'm using, flips and rolls feel tight and precise. You almost forget you're flying a micro. It really does feel like a larger Mini. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up for this one. I'll leave the flight running. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.